Chapter number 8. How do organisms reproduce? Now in this chapter we are going to discuss various mechanisms by which the organisms, plants and animals tend to reproduce. Reproduction is one of the main characteristics of all the living organisms. Now, it is defined as a process by which the organisms are able to produce new organisms of its own kind. Reproduction is an important phenomenon by which the organism, whether it is plant or an animal, it will reproduce on its own to produce its own kind, its own type, similar to its own type. Although it is considered as one of the important processes, it is not an essential process. Essential process means those processes which are necessary, absolutely necessary for the survival of an organism. Just as we know about the various mechanisms that such as nutrition, respiration, the circulation, the excretory system, all those are very, very important for the survival of an organism. But reproduction, although it is considered as one of the most important phenomena which has to happen for the species to continue its own type, it is not an essential process. That means an organism can survive in absence of reproduction. But if nutrition or food is not given to it, the organism will not be able to survive. Similarly, if it is not respiring, that means it is not taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide, then also the organism will not be able to survive. Heart is not functioning properly, the organism will not be able to survive again. And if the excretory system is having some issues, that means it is not able to work properly, the organs are undergoing failure, then also the organism will not be able to survive. But here, the reproduction is an important phenomenon, but it is not an essential process for survival. Now, what is its significance? Significance is that it is for the maintenance of an existence. That means organisms are able to maintain their existence due to the process of reproduction. All of us have come all the way up to this present stage due to the phenomena called as reproduction. Second, it helps in preserving the species. Now, a species is a group of organisms which are able to interbreed, belonging to the same type, which are capable of interbreeding. So species are preserved because of the process of reproduction. Now, reproducing organisms are similar to each other, and that's why they are capable of reproducing and producing their own type. So it helps in preserving the species. Many examples are there. Some species have become extinct because there were no suitable method of reproduction for the continuation of that species. So it helps in preserving the species. Now the third important point, that is variations during reproduction help in evolution. Now what is happening during the process of reproduction, we'll be discussing. Reproduction, as I told, it is a process by which the organisms are able to produce their own type. So what happens is that during the process of reproduction, there are variations, that means slight modifications, which are introduced during the reproduction process, and it is these variations which lead to the process of evolution. So a variation brings the evolution, and the variation is introduced by the process of reproduction. Also, it is one of the important factors that helps in providing stability to the species, because a species will only be able to survive if it has sufficient number of members. If it is not having sufficient number of members, the species will soon become extinct. So the reproduction provides stability to the species. Now, when we were talking of the reproduction, we started off that they are able to produce their own kind. So, how do organisms create copy of themselves? This is a big question. How are the organisms able to make almost exact copy of themselves? Actually, what happens is the organism has chromosome, and within the chromosome all the genetic information about the organism is there. The DNA which is present within the nucleus has all the information, all the genetic traits. So the organism has the chromosome. These chromosomes are present in the nucleus, and within the this chromosome the DNA is present, and this DNA has the genetic coding. Now, since this DNA has the genetic code, and the code decides the protein, so the DNA will decide what type of protein will be produced, and these proteins are the actually characteristics or the traits. So when the reproduction is taking place, during reproduction the DNA copy is being made. So the reproduction part, during during the reproduction the DNA copy is made. Now it is this copy which is being transferred to the new individual. Now when the DNA copy is being made, there are certain biochemical reactions taking place. What we mean by biochemical reactions, that means the cell undergoes a lot of changes, and as a result the exact copy of it is made. But when we are saying exact, that does not mean that 100% it is the same, because no biochemical reaction which is taking place for the DNA copying is 100% accurate. So there may be changes, and these changes introduce variation. We can understand this, like suppose if there is certain amount of information which is X, so the new information which will be passed on through the DNA copying can be X dash, a slight change. Now this X may be coding for a particular type of a protein, let's say protein A, and X dash will code for some other protein, maybe protein A dash. Now what will happen? This will result into a different type of a characteristic, which is slight, maybe a slight change. So over here the DNA, during the DNA copying, the variations are introduced because the reason is there is no biochemical reaction which is 100% accurate. That means no exact copy is transferred. As a result, the variations are introduced, and the variations which are produced during the reproduction are important for the process of evolution, because evolution helps in the survival of an organism according to the changing environment. Also, when we are talking of the variation, there can be two types of variation. That can be major variations and minor subtle variations, very less. Subtle variations are easily passed on from the parental organism to the daughter organism, or we can say the offspring, whereas the major variations are difficult to survive because the organism's cellular mechanism means the other cell components are not able to match up with the changes.